floor. Okay.
Have a link.
Hi, Dorene. Thank you for joining us.
Hi.
We are just about to get started.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I was looking for the link for the meeting. I couldn't find it.
Not a problem, not a problem. So since we are now live, I'm going to open up my script and thank everyone for attending. My name is Kayla Johnston. Our original host, Leo, is just having some technical difficulties. So I'm going to take over host duties until he's able to join. But this live online event will discuss recent news around missing children and unmarked burials from survivor perspectives. We are broadcasting from the traditional lands of the Cree, Oji-Cree, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene peoples and homeland of the Métis. Now, although we're broadcasting from Treaty 1 territory, we would like to extend a big warm welcome to everyone who is watching from the communities across Canada. We would also like to acknowledge the territories that our guests are speaking from tonight. Now, I'm just going to take a quick pause. I'm told that the English stream for Facebook is having delays, so I'm just going to move in and double check that everything is working, or at least confirm. I know our French streams are working. So just give me half a second here. Of course, when you want technology to work, this is when we come up with delays and some challenges. So I see our French stream is going. Just scrolling to make sure our English stream is going. Oh. Okay, so the English stream should now be going, so let us continue on. So survivors have been telling Canadians for many years that children went missing, died, and were buried at residential schools. Many families were not always told when their children went missing, were transferred to schools or medical facilities, or even when their child had died. Survivors tonight will discuss work being done in communities, what is needed from the governments and organizations, and what's necessary to make sure these children are remembered and honored through culture and ceremony. The participants, panelists will be asked a series of questions related to today's dialogue topic. Additionally, we will close the dialogue with a moderated question and answer period. So please type your questions into the chat. Today, we are joined by 5 incredible voices: Dorene Bernard, Madeleine Basile, Richard Kistabish, Joyce Hunter, and Therese Nikwe. So before I ask our panelists to introduce themselves, I was going to ask our Elder Florence to come and share prayer, but it doesn't look like Florence was able to join us at this time. So I will ask our panelists to introduce themselves. First, Dorene, could you share a little bit about yourself?
Quick, can you hear me? Yes. Hi, my name Nin Delawasi Gasadam Dandali Olnaway. Gilnik clan, Stabaganagadi, Mi'kma'ki. So my name is Dorene Bernard. I'm from Indian Brook in Sabaganagadi and Mi'kma'ki on the East Coast. And I am a grassroots grandmother. I'm a survivor, the third generation in my family. Also work for the water, and I am currently involved in the IRS commemorations for the Atlantic region. Okay.
Thank you. Next, Madeleine, could you share a little bit about yourself today?
Kwekwe and Madeleine Basile. I am an Atikamekw woman from Wimutashi in Quebec. I am the mother of 4 children. I have 4 grandchildren also. I am very proud of my family. It is important to talk about history, to talk about residential schools amongst ourselves, amongst our families, and everyone actually. I participate in ceremonies. I carry out activities with other women in order to promote healing and journeying forward. I'm very honored to be part of this panel. This is all. Thank you. Miigwech.
Thank you, Madeleine, for sharing today. Richard, could you please share a little bit about yourself? Looks like Richard disappeared for a moment here. All right, so we will move on. Therese, could you share a little about yourself?
Oui, Kwei, Thérèse Ndishmikazo, Atazwan, mon nom de baptême c'est Thérèse Nikwe, mais mon nom spirituel.
My name is Thérèse Nikwe. My spiritual is Ziwabuguni. I am part of the same nation as Madeleine Basile. We actually have the same age, and we both went to Pointe Bleue Residential School from 1962 to 72. We were there together. I come from a family of 19 children. 14 of us went to residential schools. Now we are 11 survivors of our family, survivors of residential schools. I have 4 sons and 5 grandchildren. And to me, it was a very difficult experience. We have come a long way. And I think it is with reappropriating our culture, I can today thankfully play a role in the transmission of knowledge, and especially rituals and ceremonies related to our culture. Miigwech.
Thank you very much. And Joyce, could you also share a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Wache Miswegino. My name is Joyce Hunter, and I am Cree from Pewanik, which is a Cree word. It means Flintstone. In Northern Ontario, it's the second northernmost community in Ontario, and I am attended day school. The oldest half of my family, there were 10 of us, attended St. Anne's Residential School in Fort Albany, and one of my brothers died there. He died in the process of saving another boy, and like our family had a whole experience around it, where we went out of our way to get answers around his death, to get records, and to have him repatriated home. And I've come to participate in today's discussion to talk about our experience as a family and what we learned in the process of all of the work that we did and all of the connections that we made, that kind of give us a larger understanding of what families who experience this are having to find themselves going through. More recently, I've been helping out with another group that's looking to have their grounds searched, the school grounds in their territory, and just being there to listen and to provide advice and support. So anyway, miigwech for having me, and I'm looking forward to the discussion that's going to be taking place today. I understand that Minister Carolyn Bennett has indicated that she wanted to be a part of this as an observer, to listen to the families and the stories of those who have lost a loved one through the residential school system. I'm very pleased to know that there are people at government who care about this as an issue and want to hear directly from survivors and their families. I think that's a very important first step in working towards the first finding of these children, and then the follow-up that would come from that, beyond identifying, right? Anyway, so I'll end it there, and I look forward to the discussion ahead. Miigwech.
Thank you. And I've been informed there's still a few challenges with our stream. What I'm going to be doing is switching locations in my home to try and increase the bandwidth that is accessible. And with that, you know what? I will ask my first question for the panelists. And it's a very broad question about the ongoing news of the unmarked burials. My question is, what are your thoughts on the recent news around unmarked burials at Kamloops, Maryville, and Cranbrook? And how has that news impacted yourself, family, and or community? And to start, Dorene, maybe you can start off first, and I have allocated about 5 minutes per person. And with that, I'll turn off my screen and I'll see about fixing the internet connection.
Hi, thank you. Well, when we heard on the East Coast, we're directly like from, when you say coast to coast, like BC and the Atlantic provinces are as far apart as we could get in Canada. But we wanted to send our prayers immediately to the community. You know, it was shocking, and it was expected. It was really difficult for me to process where we heard stories of the survivors over the years, you know, before the TRC, before when we used to gather together when we were going through the the legal process for the class action lawsuit. Even before, when we get together, the elders used to speak, you know, about the children that were left behind, you know, and the ones that died in the school, and then all the stories of burials where children were forced to bury bodies, you know, of a schoolmate, and about the sound, the cries from babies, in the school. And so a lot of the stories that we learned in the 60s were passed down from the 30s and 40s and 50s when my grandmother and my parents went to school there. And they talked about, you know, having making the site a sacred site because it's a burial site, and where children, babies may have been put in the incinerator or in the furnace, so there won't be any evidence of their burials. But it was always talked about, and in the last couple of engagement sessions that we did in the spring, early spring, this winter and early spring, more stories about those children. And we were in the process of already doing GPR on the site, but it wasn't. It was just for a few places in around the school where we wanted to put the plaques for the National Historic Site. In September 1st, the school at Shubenacadie was designated as one of the historic sites in Canada. And so the GPR research was being done where in those places where we were thinking about putting those plaques. And then the announcement came, you know, for the children that were found in Kamloops. And to me it was speeding up the process, you know, in not only looking at where we want to put the plaques for the historic site, but also investigation of the rest of the grounds, which is you know, it was pretty big. You know, it's still being researched. And the band, the Shubenacadie band, Shubenacadie band took over the the research to speed up the process with the University, Dalhousie, and St. Mary's University, to get it done faster. And you know, I think on July 1st, the chief had said that about 30% of the grounds have been researched so far. We don't have any. The findings are preliminary, but the findings were that there weren't any burial sites within the perimeters of what they had already researched. But we have a long ways to go, and there was a lot of outbuildings, the barns and the lake, and a lot of places around the school perimeter that we want to have research. So it's been ongoing. It was expected that that those children would be found, and it's I mean, it's something that the voices of those children have brought so many changes and awareness of the I guess the trauma of the residential school era across Canada. And we don't call it cultural genocide anymore, and we call it genocide. And I think it was really important that people, like the people that we meet, are upset that they were robbed of this education about Canada's true history, about our history. And people have come forward to say and express their feelings about I guess their view of Canada now, and they want to learn more. and they want to reach out. So that was really something for us here, where people, where we have been involved in a lot of different movements, to raise awareness about our treaty rights, for fishing and for hunting and for just to and protecting the water and all these things. And now we have so many allies, so many people that are caring about the environment, caring about the indigenous rights. And this has woke them up even more so of, the impacts that the residential schools have had on our people across Canada. And I think that's, that's really important where we stand today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dorene. So as you can see, I've switched locations. I'm hoping this is a stronger connection. I think next in my introductions, I had Madeleine. So Madeleine, I'm wondering if you could share a little about how this news has impacted your self-community.
Oui, ça a été
Yes, it has been it's been a shock for me. I was talking about it with my children. One of them was reacting. He was very, very saddened to learn about this. I was quite upset for several days. When I was going on various events, I was hearing about this. I was hearing about children that had been buried on the grounds of residential schools. So the truth matters. I'm very much honored to have been part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And we need to continue. We need to persevere, uncover the truth. It is so important. The memory of these children, one person was telling me, do we know the names of these children? And I replied, well, they will carry out searches, and in some cases, we may be able to find their names. It was just terrible for all of us survivors for several weeks. It's like my wounds were just reopened. It's like the shame and the loss, this rejection, all of these feelings just emerged back up in me. This is why I accepted to participate in this panel. The truth must be uncovered. I will stand strong and proud for these people. I will work with all of those who will want to carry out searches for these children, for their survivors' descendants, and for, these children, they had a family. Their families were never informed of what happened to their children. I'm still shaken, very much shaken. We were just children. And there are government bodies and church bodies that they made decisions. They made decisions. So let us work, let us denounce these situations. The interpreter is very sorry. The feed was lost momentarily. We are still standing and we are still speaking our mother tongues. I am very thankful for the center, the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, for setting up this panel. Also, I received several calls. I have received emails from Québécois who were very much moved by the situation. These people were sharing with me, just sharing their support. And I was thinking that us Indigenous peoples, we are so strong, so present, so beautiful. We're such a beautiful people, whether from Nova Scotia, Quebec, I think British Columbia also. We are a beautiful people, very much peacemakers and good people. I'm seeing words here, some benevolent words. Let's stand in solidarity with each other. I don't know if I've gone over my 5 minutes, Kayla, but this makes me think of other events. There was a 15-minute time allotted and we we were not allowed to go over. Anyway, I don't know if I went over, but I will have the right to speak again later, so I will stop here for now. Miigwech.
Thank you, Madeleine. The time, but I'm also watching the time, so you do not have to worry about it. Therese, would you also be able to share your perspective or your thoughts on the recent news?
Oui, ben ça a été
It was very upsetting for me. It brought back, everything flooded back. And even though all the work that we've done and all the path that we've undertaken to get back up and to continue forward and to progress and to regain our pride and our self-confidence in our people, everything came flooding back. It didn't have necessarily have an impact of our self-confidence, but it's bringing back and to live again what we had lived again. And to recognize that these wounds exist and that we have. I have asked myself several times, what happened to me, knowing that something had happened to me. With all the different approaches that have been undertaken, I would like to thank everyone for all their efforts, for working so hard to unveil and to bring forth the truth, because thanks to that, through that, we're trying to understand together what happened to us collectively, such as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and to go out and to go find the wounded child within each of us, and to get back us and to see our children. Because our heritage, our legacy is there with what we've lived. We see our children progress, and sometimes it's very difficult, especially now with the news that have recently come out with these burial grounds. These, my children are upset and they're living something, and I always tell them, we are going to heal together. It is together that we will heal. Because it brought everything back. It was that we were getting better, and then all of a sudden we're brought back down. It's like 100 bricks fell on us, and I think that individuals are more than determined to get to the bottom of things, because what it made me relive again I had the chance to travel out to British Columbia since I was working for my nation, and I visited sites like Kamloops and Cranbrook. And when it came out Cranbrook, right away, I thought about one of those former residential schools where I attended in order to participate to a school on community economic development. And I saw right away, I told myself, they're going to find something. They're going to find something there. Because it was around 2006. This former residential school had been changed into a hotel, and it belonged to the Delta hotel chain. And they had belonged to this project in order to give a new use to these residential schools. And while I was walking down the hallways, I was with a friend, and I told her, you know, we met there and we've been friends since. Horrors must have taken place here. The energy was so negative. I could feel the suffering. And that's, yes, we're going to build ourselves back up. But we need to know what happened before and to heal everything that we need to heal. And as I mentioned, I thank all those who worked hard for years to bring the truth out to light. Because we can easily talk about reconciliation, but it's not something that happens by itself. We have a lot of work to do. And it's true that the voice of healing is done through the knowledge, through the sensitivities that we have and that we can feel ourselves, and that we carry this history on our shoulders. This burden is on us, everything that we lived, everything that was done to us. And we think about our children so much, and our grandchildren, because we want them to find the path again towards peace, freedom. And I trust that it'll happen, but there's a lot of pain that we need to heal together. It was really shocking. It was very upsetting. So even among us, where we went to the residential schools, we talked about it. We wanted to cry, and I reached out to Madeleine to share the pain, the suffering that I was feeling for all those children and all those families of those children. So that's what I wanted to share.
And Joyce, I'm wondering if you can close out with this first round of questions by sharing your perspective on how this news has impacted.
Oh, I mean, in general, I'll be very honest. I cried a lot. I had an incredible headache. I think it was like the second day after hearing the news about what happened in Kamloops. And 215, like just hearing that number for me was incredibly painful because we lost one in our family. And what my parents were told is that they had a legal obligation to hand their children over or face the consequences. And at that time, it was either jail time or fines or a combination of both, or having your benefits withheld from you. And so there were a lot of ways to coerce parents into handing their children over. But they didn't get that same reciprocal respect when my brother died. What they did was they sent his body over to Timmins to to be reviewed by the coroner, and coroners make calls on whether or not they're going to have an inquest to prevent deaths from happening in similar circumstances. And he decided not to have an inquest because they immediately ruled my brother's death accidental, although the report shows that he had injuries that were not consistent with his drowning. We did get a copy of the coroner's report. But there were a number of things that my father over 35 years tried to do, which was get information around the true circumstances involving my brother's death, to get records, and to bring him home. But he also wanted justice. And I think for those 215 families in Kamloops, and then all the other communities where they've done ground penetrating radar and have started to find more numbers, yeah, I find them all. But I mean, I think what's most important in the discussion here is the lack of access to justice for our families that have experienced this and are experiencing this, because we're not done. We're still experiencing this. From my perspective, with my family, the man who was responsible for my brother's death, because as I went through the process, because my father, after 35 years of trying to find answers, was stonewalled at every turn, whether he was going to the oblates or the government or the police, and trying to find all this information. And then and also to start the process of repatriation, because there was something really incredibly powerful about being, well, first of all, having your children home with you, but secondly, to go over and to be able to put down some flowers or have a conversation. There's something very healing and very powerful about that. And my parents were not afforded that opportunity. And it's as if they were given a life sentence for something that they had no wrongdoing. And we know that the residential schools, they told us that everything that we are is wrong, and that we needed to be exorcised in some respect, to be lesser forms of the people who were taking us and our parents. And that hurts to know that the whole point of that whole system was to brainwash us into being something that we're not, and to not acknowledge that everything that we are is perfect. And yes, we're different, but that should be celebrated and not treated in the way that it was. I think that was a tragedy, and it remains a tragedy. Even in the discourse that's happening today, I still see an echo of that, because the collective consciousness that is Canada, that has come from the system that was created, where the education system told us that we were wrong, what we were was wrong, but that same message was being communicated to our brothers and sisters in the broader community. And so the way that we're treated collectively comes from a result of that. And but ultimately, our family never came to the third thing that my father asked for, and that was justice. But in the process of finding out what happened to him, I did end up meeting the groundskeeper of the school, and he physically pulled my brother's body from Lake St. Anne the day that he died. And I found out that the headmaster, based on his actions, should have been charged with criminal negligence causing death. Now, there's two things. There's no statute of limitations where there are homicide charges. The other thing is that man is still alive. And he has lived his life out comfortably without being called to the floor and being held to account for his actions that contributed to my brother's death. And I'm very sure that there are a lot of families who are in the same boat as we are, and we deserve justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Now I see a little chat box that Florence, our elder, has arrived. So I've also seen Richard, he's rejoined us. So Florence, could you press that request to speak button? I think now is a good time if we could share that opening prayer. And I would also like to remind our audience that's watching, if you do feel that this material is very heavy, we recommend calling the Indian Residential School Crisis Line. Its telephone number is 1-866-925-4419. And there is also the Hope for Wellness helpline, and their number is 1-855-242-3310. Now, Florence, if you can hear me, are you able to press that request to speak button? Yes, here we go. Florence will now join us.
Don't say bonjour, hello, relatives.
Hello, Florence.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It's emotional to hear your stories, sisters. I too am a residential school survivor. And I definitely know the pain. I know the sorrow. And I too cried because those are our relatives. I just wanted to share a prayer with you that we know has been a foundation of our continued existence. They may have tried to take our spirit, but our spirit never died. And we still hang on tight to what our ancestors have given to us. And that's exactly what I'm going to say my prayer on. So, and I'm from Sandy Bay First Nation, and it's an Anishinaabe speaking community. So I'll be doing the invocation in my language. And if you can think about our relatives across this beautiful land of ours, remove my glasses. Jamani do. Was Oshkabineshi que Disney cast Mako Denamaran. Agagige midday reque da Gawique Dongong Donji. Miss Shomis King got the bench again. Keen Cab Minaman Bimadiswin. Me wetch give me go. Gagip me in Oniang. Cabbage me. Jimambikwen the mang, yeah, Bimadiswin Gagip me Mijiang. O mom. Chip me Dwang Oma a king. Miss Shomis be me and the Tam Nongum Ma. Gab me Navatavian, Ganin Gadget me and the Taman. And in Bay me Najimot Hongwe Niwich Quack. Gab me the Vajimot. Age we know me. Me wetchan the wat. Kagip me in Ojiang. Gigi doon in anan, dinoy in anan. Gabi, chip me an only one, chip me a penamon of that one. Kakinagego, kagit me on not one. Imagine me Ouija was young. Me watch give me go. Again, me show me suck, no come suck, can son down among. Gab me a big as what. Be me a wedging mark, chip me, not tagging. Chip me get the mark tagging. Chip me sub tagging, chip me not the margoing. Age, mama nan, ake, be me wetching ma. Kinagego, gabi, cap me. Kashke is it? Chip me on that doing, mashikion, we snewing. Age, in air, a binotia. Gagip me, canany mat, a pea. Pagiteni mat, chip me kigas on it. Amishio, then a maganak. Akino mamo chi mamo kumang chi ajege ke yot ima kagip mi dakanes yot ke we no mi ma chip mi onche naga chi gaswat agavik chip mi gagi tottamo gaswat mi shomis I hinga ni jo nik yotapin niap abino jack keep me giti mendo ke we no mi shomis ke sazindoi Bimi mi wetchendan inge atsuka nasak kap mi shaweni mwat abinogia bimi ga wete we machi inge abinojek onje meisha me nongum age gyabe nigan abinoji minanik chip mina nagachi guzyang mi machip mi minabasak wing inge chani mishko watisyang relatives I will do a translation of the prayer from my language to the English language, which is a language that we all learned to say. And I'm happy that I didn't have to recite any of the prayers that we were taught, but do it from my heart. First and foremost, we always acknowledge the Creator, and we acknowledge all the gifts that He has given us as a people, and that He created the world. And in the world, He gave us the sun, He gave us the moon, and all the star world. And He also gave us the four cardinal directions in which the grandmothers and grandfathers sit equally and together. They look after us, and I call upon them to come and listen to us and to be with us, as my sisters have shared, and that we reach all the four directions of our people. And we say thank you for the gift of our languages that are so beautiful to continue to be heard throughout our land, and that however it was done, we still held through to our own spirit, and we can still express ourselves in our own languages. And if you don't speak your language, don't worry about it. It's there for us to search it out together. It's there. And we also acknowledge Mother Earth for what she continues to provide for us, sustains our lives and sustains us through the food that she provides, the animals that gave up their lives so we can be fed, and the medicines that we pick to heal our minds, our bodies, and our spirits. And we also acknowledge all the water of the land, and in particular, we acknowledge the grandmothers that in the first creation they said they would look after those waters. And in particular, we acknowledge as women that life, that gift of life that we have been given, the gift to be able to bring forward that life that's a real, true blessing. And I also acknowledge the ones in between the doorways. You know, they're the little people, and they're the ones that we are told that love our children and play with our children very much, and they look after them, and they play with them. And we also thank Mother Earth for looking after the children that have been found and the ones yet to be found, that we will continue to support one another right across our nation as you do the work, and we'll send our prayers and our thoughts. And we have been with you. We're together in this. And yes, we're going to heal together. Miigwech, kinanako minim. Miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. I will now ask Richard if you might be able to hit that request to speak button. We'll add you back to the panel. Now, Richard, if you can hear me, if you could just press that request to speak button and we can add you in. There we are. Should just take one moment. Richard, you're back.
Yeah, I was so mad at this machine, you know. I almost threw it on the lake.
That's the beauty of technology. But I'm wondering if you could share your perspective and maybe introduce yourself as well about that recent news, since we missed it at the beginning.
Mon nom est Richard Kistabish, so I'm going to speak French, language that I learned in the residential school. Mon nom est Richard Kistabish.
My name is Richard Kistabish. It's the name that I was given when I was given to get out of the hospital, but my real name is Jinagwisi. We made fun of me often because of this name, Negwasabi, and it means he's perfect. He is exactly like that. That's how he is. I've been working in the residential school for many years now, for 40 years. So when the first year is in 78, when I was chief and I had mentioned the impact that the residential schools had on our lives. But nobody wanted to hear that. Nobody wanted to listen to that. It was too painful. It was too painful. It brought back horrible memories, and for most people. And it brought back painful memories. I spent 10 years in the residential school in Saint Mac et Figuerie. I met many people during my time at the residential school. I met Cree, the Ojibwe, the Achimaic, and a few Mohawk, are natural enemies in history, supposedly. But what I want to tell you today when they found the children, I thought, because at 7 years of age, it was the first time that I went back home, that I went back to my home. We lived in a tent when I left, before going to the residential school. And when I came back for the first time, the tent was gone. It was now a type of apartment, a type of a house that had been rented out. I was very disappointed. About going back to that home in that condition, because that wasn't the way I had left my home. It was very warm. We lived in tents at that time, and the first thing that I did when I arrived was to eat. To eat a piece of bannock. It felt so good. I spent 10 months without eating this food. And when I heard the news of the 215 children, I thought of 215 pieces of bannock that they would have had if they had gone home. We were craving our food, dying of food without eating bannock. 10 months without eating moose, without eating fish, without eating ogas, the guinouge, and amek, all our traditional foods that had given us a personality that was very different from society. And they took that away from us. They stole my childhood away from me. We took my childhood away and we threw it out in the trash. Even though I had gone back home, things had changed so much. Yeah, sure, I was with mom and dad, but at the same time, it was a certain level of apprehension, because she went with my mom because she had ignored me for over a year. My father ignored me for a year. And when I returned home, there was something also that was different. There was a little baby in the house, and this baby, I thought that was my mom was taking care of the next door neighbor's baby, but in fact it was actually my sister that I was meeting for the very, very first time. And it was the same thing year in and year out. We were 10 at home, and each year there was always a new baby. But what's more particular about the return home was getting in, being able to reach out and to connect with my mother and my father, trying to renew that relationship that we had before and that we already had. It was very difficult. To comprehend the relationship that I was going to have with my parents, was a relationship of love and hate at the same time. At the residential school, we taught us to hate. We were taught to hate our language, to hate our culture, and to hate our parents. It was vile to do something to 7, 8, or 9-year-olds. And we have to grow up and become adults with this conspiracy that we underwent. In a certain way, I thought that the 215 children who were not able to return home had a happy end in a way, because the majority of our brothers and our sisters that returned home with a broken spirit, a spirit that was no longer healthy to help them persevere in life, and many of them are died. And they died in the healing process, in that recovery process, and some were not able to get to that stage of their life. They died before. I think it's very important to commemorate these individuals who died, also the children who were found, that they sacrificed their life to maintain, to keep our language and our culture alive. We need to pay tribute to these children. Yes, justice needs to be served, but also justice is to repair all the evil that was perpetrated It is key to undertake this approach to fix the harm that was infliged upon us. And we ask ourselves, we often ask we often ask me, how do we do this? How do we get about to fix this? It's simple. We have to tell the truth. They have to tell the truth. Be it the governments, the church that participated in this genocide, they have to tell the truth. I don't trust excuses that have been made until now. We need more than that. Excuses lead to nowhere. They don't contribute anything. They didn't give me or my family anything. We have to fix. We have to restitute. We have to restore.
Les 212 premiers qui ont lancé ce
The 212 first people who cried out about this. Well, this has been a personal issue, and I've been using my voice for them, whether in French or in English. I don't care. Their voice needs to be heard. There's been whispering for a long time, but now we need to speak. Miigwech.
For sake, I would like to move on to the next set of questions. And we'll do the same rotation. So it's Dorene, Madeleine, Therese, Joyce, and Richard in that order. So this next question is around remembrance and memory. And is, what does remembrance and healing look like from your perspective? And what do you think would be the most meaningful remembrance effort for yourself or for a community?
Great. Well, I think what has been happening since the end of May is it was a lot of anger, so much anger, and grief and loss is really throughout the Mi'kma'ki. That immediately people needed to do something to honor the children, their voices and their spirits, and many ceremonies were done, of course, across the country. Pipe ceremonies, and people went to the Shubenacadie residential school site to they did a walk where they brought stuffed animals and teddy bears, and children brought their most favorite precious toys to leave there for the kids, the children. They brought their little shoes, and they put them there along the river, all along the river, the road going up to the school. And in our community, they did a march, a survivors march, where survivors and descendants from the Shubenacadie school walked from the school to the town, which is a few kilometers away, to the train station, where many of them were brought by train to the school, and many and most of them left to go home by train as well. So it was really significant for one elder survivor want to do that walk. He called it the Freedom Walk, and so we did that. That walk. It was bringing survivors together for the first time in, I don't know, 5 years maybe, to have them come to share in our grief and share, be together. It seemed really important that even with COVID and the guidelines, the protocols on COVID here, and at least in the East Coast, where so many people were, weren't allowed to have gatherings, that kind of thing. But it was so important for us to get together that we made that time and that space, especially at the school, at the former Shubenacadie school. And then a young man, a young child, 11-year-old, just turned 12 on the day July. He walked from 200 kilometers in 6 days. He did an awareness walk. He talked about being a child and feeling like he wanted to raise awareness of the children that are being found, and especially the ones that are yet to be found. And he wanted to honor the survivors of the residential school and raise awareness, educate people about the genocide that's happening. And so he walked 200 kilometers from one town where he lives now to his home reservation, which is to about 197 kilometers away. And many people joined him on his walk as he went. And he raised about $30-some thousand for survivors in our area, and to help them with the healing and help to educate. He wanted the curriculum for his school. He wanted to do something to educate people about what happened and what is happening today. And it was he so raised so many of us up. He gave us hope, that this is that it doesn't have to be all grief. He said he wanted to take that negative and turn it into a positive. And that he did by raising awareness. So, and people came on the side of the highways and overpasses as he was walking, and lined the overpasses and waved to him and brought food and water, and some even just joined in the walk with him for how many kilometers they could walk. And it was amazing what this young boy did. So it was really something that he inspired so many youth, across the nation, really, about what they can do. What can I do, to help? Bring her in. Yeah, bring her in. I'm sorry. And so there were some things that we're doing as we all during this last few weeks. It's been really one thing we did is we didn't celebrate Canada Day, and many of the communities in Nova Scotia didn't celebrate Canada Day, but an awareness day. Awareness Day and Remembrance Day for our children that have been found. And so it's really it was really something that our town, the nearest town, Halifax, and all the cities around Nova Scotia and the Maritimes decided not to, honor that day and have a day of reflection and a day of, mourning. And so I think for them to do this, it helped us to share our pain, but also what needs to be done. What needs to be done. We need to, like Richard said, to speak the truth. To discover the truth. And as an individual, I think many of us have our own ways how we honor the spirits of those children. I felt really bad for the churches that were being burnt down, and our church in our community was also set fire. we have elders in our community that are Catholics, and you know and they live right next door to the church. A couple of elders there, and you know it must have been very traumatizing to them as well. You know, to see that happen, and you know that the part of the church that they set fire was our like a community hall, so we all used that hall, you know, and it was seemed like it was very counterproductive to healing in our community, you know. I just felt that there has to be other ways that we can come together, even asking our elders, you know, some pray with the pipe and go into the sweat lodge, but they also go to church and say the rosaries, you know. I think we have to respect their beliefs, you know, respect how they pray. And it was just something to me, anyways, that I felt bad for them. And I said, I believe that they're having some struggles with their church, you know, on the discovery of the children. The same order, Sisters of Charity, ran the Shubenacadie School, also ran the Cranbrook, the school in Cranbrook. So the two schools that they ran in Canada were one on the East Coast and one on the West Coast. So the remembrance that we've done is clean back the river. You know, part of the historic site was along the river, and our people went down and kind of designated that land a sacred land, space, safe place for people to come to hold ceremony, to pray for the water, to pray for the land and the people and those spirits. So it's really important that we have that opportunity, we have that space and that place to go to. And in the future, we will be putting a monument there for the residential school survivors and families. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. Madeleine, I'm wondering if you could share your perspective on remembrance and healing.
Oui, la commémoration, c'est une
Yes, remembrance is a very important step. It is there to disseminate information to help survivors. Remembrance entails a lot of memories. It's about not forgetting. It's about the whole process. The process can be long and difficult. We need much perseverance to journey forward. Following the announcement about the 215 children, what I was observing, I was seeing that survivors needed to talk. We heard people, amongst at least survivors and people I knew, some of them had never shared their experience. I heard of one or two people saying, I remember, yeah, the residential school, this and that happened. So people opened up more. Remembrance is our history also. The other day, I did a presentation with a group of people. Before I started, I introduced myself. I said, Kwe, I am Madeleine. My mother's name is Thérèse. My father's name is Joseph. It was important to me, starting with each presentation, to say my parents' name, They're both deceased now, but it is a way to pay tribute to them, to remember them. So naming people who have left, who have gone on. At one point, there was something, and we were asked about the orange ribbons. We have a little sister who died at a residential school. She was 9 years of age. And I always wondered why she wasn't buried in my community in Wimotashi. She was buried in Meshtayesh at the cemetery there, and we were kind of perplexed. We went to the cemetery and we didn't quite remember where her remains were because there was no cross to indicate it. So with the help of someone from the community, we were able to find where, according to him, my little sister was resting. So we decided, there was no cross there, like I said, but we put a plaque with orange ribbons and flowers. This is a way to commemorate her memory. This is a way to gather people. They're simple gestures, simple actions. I was hearing earlier about a march. Yeah, this is very nice also. Doing it together. At a certain time in my life, I was receiving funding for a healing project. And I put together some texts that were written by survivors. This is another way to do it. Asking survivors to write their thoughts, their remarks, whatever they wish to put down on paper. According to me, remembrance is extremely important. We can't just skip this step. I was speaking earlier about simple actions, yes, and also inviting non-Indigenous people to be part of these activities, these commemoration activities. This is important for healing. When the healing center closed in 2010, I was very sad. There were beautiful projects throughout Canada for healing. They were closed overnight, basically. And there were such wonderful projects, including with the Atikamekw community. Wonderful healing projects. I was very chagrined. I'm working with a team, a very special team. There are people who are so important to me, were important in my healing process. I'm proud of them. They're all survivors of residential schools. We give emotional support and cultural support. We provide these for all three Atikamekw communities, as well as people living in urban centers. We provide support services to survivors and their families. Crucial families. Children, grandchildren, parents, grandparents. This is an important step in commemorating, including family. We were taken from our families. in residential schools, I was there with my sisters, but my sisters were in one place. I was in another place. We were all split up. In another building were the boys. This was so sad. Splitting the family like that. This entity that is family. When I talk about commemoration, I always think of the children. I don't know how many, there were 215 and then going up, I always think of these children. When I put the ribbons for my sister, I put a second one for these children. Let's not forget these children. I was listening to Richard earlier. Sometimes when I talk about this, I get emotional. But I really appreciated what Richard was saying earlier. This brought some peace to me. This is what I wanted to share with you about remembrance. It is indeed crucial for every one of us. Miigwech.
Thank you, Madeleine. Therese, I'm wondering if you could share your thoughts on remembrance and healing.
Oui, comme Madeleine dit, effectivement, c'est
Yes, like Madeleine said, it is so important. What it means to use? Well, we need to think about each one of our families. I have an older sister who went to Saint-Marc-de-Figuerie Residential School. She also attended Pointe Bleue Residential School, and she passed away last year. She had a lot of health issues, and she had a lot of trauma from what she had gone through at residential schools. And it was extremely difficult in the context of COVID-19. We didn't really, I was able to spend some time with her just before she breathed her last. I was there with her children also. She had married a Quebecois man, so her children are in between two cultures. But we all have work to do to build bridges. They are part Quebecois, part Atikamekw. So it is important to carry out remembrance activities together with non-Indigenous peoples. We saved some documents and also some artifacts for rituals. Her son, she decided, where we're going to put the drum on the family land where she spent the first years of her life, or where she was born in Wemotashi. This is also an important place. Before it was a reservation, it was a gathering place for Atikamekw, but also for other nations. So it is important to do this and to inform people about the history of these places. We found the bodies of these children, but we feel so close to them. Every time I visited another province, I went to Manitoba, also to British Columbia, and I feel at home. It's important to foster these relationships when we commemorate these events. We're allowing people to go meet other people and share our experience. We can also better understand what happened. We know that residential schools were, spread across Canada, but it started earlier out west. And Western Canada has significance for Atikamekw because we have preserved our language. However, with our rituals and ceremonies, well, it's by being in contact with people from out west that we can revitalize these rites and these ceremonies. So we do this through acts of commemorations. We have another way also to go about this. We have artists. There's a young Atikamekw from our place. She is the daughter of a survivor, and she wrote a song, a beautiful song, and she had several people participate. Her mother contributed to the lyrics. So this is basically, there are different ways to use the talents and the wherewithal that we have. Even if these stories are tainted with such chagrin, it is also rich. We have to see everything that is part of us, the dignity. All these stories are dramatic, but we have dignity through this.
Lise et tout ça.
Of the churches and whatnot, and yes, our grandmothers, they had their faith. They showed us how to keep faith and to trust. They showed us how to believe, the importance of the relationship with the earth and the Great Spirit. And today, I have great expectations towards the church and also frustrations. And at one moment, I was no longer going to church. But when I lost my grandmother, and then in my church in Saint Anne in Beaupré, and I saw something that was grandiose. And it was, we have a reconciliation that we need to live and to undergo. But I like to say that the church as an institution, I more or less believe in it, but the symbol of faith, we have a lot of work to do. And my dream that to all the rituals and all the rites that celebrate each part of life, each stage of life reintegrated in our life, because it's very different from now. Because it's as if the child had been born with a taint, and it has to. The child is oashi, is to be a life, is this child that is guiding us and that gives us the light and shows us the path to make sure that we are aware that when a child is born, is conceived, we are all responsible of that child. Just like the children who died, the adults who were responsible for their deaths, the way that they died, they were far away from the soul, even though they were children of the church. It's very serious. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that aspect in order to, when we talk about commemoration, We need to look at all the different ways to reestablish the links, the relationships that we have to establish, regardless the burden that we need to undertake to make sure that life has that sacred meaning. Commemoration will come different shapes in order to give back that sacred nature.
I will now ask Joyce, would you be able to share a little bit about your perspectives of remembrance and remembrance, memory, and healing?
I think one thing that isn't something that is common knowledge in the collective Canadian consciousness is the fact that the children who died or went missing from the residential school system were not part of the original class action lawsuit that saw the $5 billion settlement for survivors. That was for survivors. And then there was some public education campaign initiatives for dollars that were left over and some other things. But the scope of that discussion deliberately left out those children that died or went missing. And there has been a settlement with day school claimants as well. However, those children, when they died, their voices were silenced, and there was nobody to advocate for them and for their specific set of issues. And as my background's in journalism and as somebody who watches the public discourse take place, one of the things that I often see in the discussion is we already paid that settlement. Why are the Indians complaining again? That seems to be a common theme in the discussion that's happening in the public discourse. And we really, if we're talking about remembrance, I think that people from the broader community who are aware should definitely come out as allies, because the other thing that I see across social media and in the public discourse, especially in Indian country, is a lot of people are grieving right now. They're in a lot of pain and they need to be protected, uplifted, and respected and loved so much right now. And the other thing that I'm seeing a lot of when I watch all of my feeds, all the different social media channels that I'm attached to, is that I am hearing for the first time stories from survivors who had never spoke out and told their story. And because of what has happened, it has triggered memories and traumas, old hurts. And I'm hearing and seeing new sides of people who are a part of my newsfeed or just somebody that has shared in a public setting their personal story. And it's amazing to me how many stories were untold in the first round with the survivors, and then in the second round with the day school claimants in that class action. And I know that those children do need justice. And like I had said earlier, the man who is responsible for excuse me, my children are fighting over the bathroom. I don't know if you can hear them. At any rate, these children and their families, they really do need to have that attention and that respect paid to their individual cases so that those families can get the justice that they need. And we shouldn't be talking about this in the context of remembrance. Rather, we should be having a conversation around what can we do now to support the families that are currently experiencing this fresh wave of grief and the opening of old wounds in ways that are very, very triggering and very, very traumatic. I think that's a very important thing to do. And I really urge people who see themselves as being allies to come forward and correct their brothers and sisters from the broader community when they say we've already paid that out. And I mean, it's also mutes, and it doesn't acknowledge the thing that you cannot monetize, which is the damage and the pain and the collective trauma that's there, and what has what I describe as people who are out in the community who are the walking wounded, the people who lost their children and who were never able to recover from that, whether it was their own children or their aunties and uncles, someone that was close to them, and who suffer mental health or addictions issues, all of those kinds of things, because that is a cumulative effect, it's a side effect of that whole system, and it went on for generations across an entire race of our people. So we need to acknowledge the depth and breadth of the seriousness of what was visited upon us. I think that's a very important discussion that we need to have across this country. And I think it will look very different from an individual perspective, because the one thing that is very clear in all of this is that healing isn't linear or easy. It's actually very messy, and it's almost like a spiral. When you feel like you've dealt with something, another thing happens, and then it re-triggers those whole traumas. And that is an indication that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of actual healing. But yes, telling that story and making sure that the public discourse is being told that when you're seen and heard and understood, there also comes that the fact that what you're saying and what you've been saying all along will be respected. And that's a very important piece that we're really only now starting to come to. The individual acts that I've seen have been really incredible. I've seen a lot of people hanging orange shirts in their doorway, people placing teddy bears out, little shoes. There's a sacred fire happening in the city, and essentially, since the news came that these children were found, they decided to hold a sacred fire. I'm not sure how long it will continue. It's been essentially since the announcement came, and I actually fled the city on Canada Day because I was concerned about what the public was going to say in response to the calls to have it be it a day of reflection and not celebrate essentially colonization and the dispossession of our lands and resources and the genocide of our children on Canada Day, because of the enormity of what had been uncovered, the skeletons in Canada's closet, so to speak. And I was supposed to actually have a conversation with a historian from Switzerland and an artist. What they're doing in Lucerne is they became aware recently that they had Swiss missionaries who came over and who contributed to our genocide in some of the work that they had done. However, the missionaries that the story has back home has been told that these people saved us as Indigenous people and that they were our saviors, and they pulled us away from being pagans and heathens and all of this, and they were lauded in their history journals as being great influencers in history. And the professor went to take a closer look at the journals of the missionaries at the time, and it turns out that they had settled in this, it was in America, in a village near what turns out to have been Chief Sitting Bull's community. And within 10 years, they had either been run out or killed. off of their lands. And so, I mean, it's amazing to me that it was like a set of Swiss missionaries, about 200 strong, that were responsible for taking, being responsible for their role in helping to take down Chief Sitting Bull, who is, as you all know, like a very important figure in Indigenous history. And then he actually went back to find out the full truth of that whole process, and then he went back and he published it in German, so to tell the Swiss people the truth of what had happened. And now he's doing more work on because when he came to Canada to research that book and he talked to Sitting Bull's great-grandson, he found out about the residential school systems and what was done there, and the violence and the abuse that we experienced as peoples. And he decided to also tell that story. And I was supposed to talk to them about my family's experience and what had happened and what we're hoping for from the broader community across the pond, and about what they can do to help with that process of reparation for our people. And so I did end up having that conversation with them, but I just on Canada Day could not. I just didn't have the energy, and I was really dreading what the Canadian public would say. And but I was really happy to see those orange shirts as I was driving into the bush across the city, just to get away from it all. And then when I came back, I was happy to see that there are more people in the broader communities outside of our First Nations and Inuit and Métis communities who experience this, who are now starting to really know what actually happened, and have been moved to act. I think that's a very important thing, is that piece, is that people who were once really didn't care, or it was so outside of their experience that they just weren't interested to learn, are hearing about this and are motivated to act. I think when I like, for me, I think it's really incredible when I see that that there are people from the broader community come on to
Don't want to
start to
tip
support
you
that.
off.
Anyways,
but-
yeah.
Thank you so much, Joyce. I didn't want to cut you off there, but we've already gone over time, and we still have Richard to kind of wrap us up. I don't think we will have time for that Q&A like we had promised, but we would still like our audience to submit questions, and then we can release the answers to those questions at a later time. So Richard, I'm wondering if you can wrap us up. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be very short on this one because I've been, I was a member of the Aboriginal Healing Foundation for all the years that was existing. And I just want to say that healing is not the destination. Healing is a way of life. You learn how to live with it, and you have to control that. I don't know how many of you have watched the movie called A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe. He was suffering from a disease, and he learned how to live with that. We have to do the same kind of exercise. And also, I want to suggest too that in the name of those kids that they never return, we have to start a campaign of naming our new babies in the original language. That's the thing, remembering the names, remembering the language, remembering the culture. I have a son, he's 40 years old. I name him Migas. And also I have a daughter, he's 33. Her name is Wanaki. Wanaki was born during the Oka crisis, and Wanaki means making peace. And also I have a boy, my baby boy. He's 28 today. I call him Minawe. Minawe means do good, be good. And I think it's part of commemorating those kids that never made home. We have to start educating our kids, our children, to name their kids with the language that they use at home. Never mind about Richard, Therese, Madeleine, Dorene, and Joyce. Naming your kids about the original names. I see the decade of the language, the Aboriginal language, is going to start next year. My dream is that 10 years from now, no one kid that is 10 years old should have a name like Richard. He should have his own language name. We should start that. It's commemorating those kids that never made home. It's also to make him back again to life, and having these kind of names to be said in a classroom everywhere. It's gonna resound a different sound, and we're gonna remember them. The 215 that they started this thing. I think we should start a campaign to educate our kids to have their original names. That will make justice for them. That will make repairs for them. And we have to educate those kids. So that's how I started 40 years ago to name my kids by the Anishinaabe name. And it's important. Today they are so proud to have that name. You know, especially when they heard about the Kamloops thing. We asked my daughter, "What is your name?" It says Wanaki, and she was so proud of that name. And she was born during a crisis that there was a war that happened in that time in Montreal. So that's how I see commemoration. That's how I see how to make those kids to become alive again. It's me, Rich.
Thank you, Richard. And you know what? I did have one question that came in that I will ask all the panelists. And I will actually have a timer. I'll put a 1-minute timer so everyone can see. And I'm hoping we could quickly answer this one question. And it's so closely related. It was, how do we commemorate the students who are buried at or near former residential schools? Oh, okay, so let's see. Stop. Okay,
Is that
so
me?
that is you first.
Well, I believe that we have the date now. We have September 30th as our day to commemorate. I feel like that's the day we should have those ceremonies, those pipe ceremonies, and those remembrance ceremonies for all the children that didn't come home. And I think people are ready to. More people are ready to have those ceremonies and to honor the students, the former students of the residential school, those that have passed on, those that fought so hard for justice for us, that have already journeyed on, and especially the children that are at these sites. Like I spoke at our event last week, and we may never find all the children, and like I explained earlier on tonight, but I said that we can still remember them, and we can still have ceremony for them. And then when we go up on the hill, when we go there, we feel their spirits. We feel them there, and we need to do ceremony to help them to journey on, to go home and to be with Creator, and to have that peace. So this is something that we can all do, and we have the date and a time, and we can do it every year, and we can raise awareness every year for.
Your minute is
Okay,
up.
thank you.
Sorry, so tight. Madeleine, do you have a 1 minute answer to commemoration? What can we do? Madeleine, that is for you.
Oh, could you please repeat the question? I didn't quite understand.
Yes. How can we commemorate the students buried or at or near the former residential schools?
How to commemorate them? Yeah. Well, there was a movement, right? With the orange ribbons and the shoes. I think this is a beautiful way to remember them. I always think of the names also. I mentioned it, I think. These children have names, right? I was hearing earlier that I don't know who it was about the names of the children anyway. This is important. Names tell where we come from, where we are going, who our ancestors are. We need to talk about it also, to disseminate information, to just bring up the topic. I often think about my children and my grandchildren. My grandchildren don't, they're young, they don't know of this yet, but eventually I will tell them about it. I will tell them what happened. In my mind, I always think of these children. They are very much in my prayers. I pray for them. It is a personal way to commemorate them. But yes, we can also continue with movements like what I saw with the orange ribbons, collective and community-based movements. For now, this is all that I'm thinking about. Miigwech.
And Therese, do you have a 1 minute answer to commemoration for the students?
Ok. Bah, moi,
Well, I very much like the idea to have a celebration on September 30th with pipes and also with the drums. The drums remind us of a heartbeat. There's also a link with the orange color. Orange is a significant color. It corresponds to our energy center for women. So these children are with Mother Earth. They are in the matrix of the earth, and with drums, with a significant day, this will be a nice way to commemorate these children. Thank you.
Thank you, Therese. Joyce, do you have any comments on commemoration? A quick 1 minute comment?
Yes, absolutely. Miigwech for the question. Not sure who posed it, but I think it's a good one. The Orange Shirt Day was originally there for children who attended residential schools and were essentially told to have their identity taken away. And I know that there has been a call for a national day of mourning for the lost children of the residential school system, that they can have their own day of remembrance, so that we can spark discussions nationally on that issue specifically, which is separate from the children who were taken into the schools and had everything stripped away and had their baths and their numbers issued to them as if they were entering a penitentiary. I really support the idea of these children having their own separate National Day of Mourning, because that's an important discussion that needs to be had on its own, because it was such a large issue. And I also think it would be a great opportunity for teachers to separate out the issue in the school systems across the country, because the more that there's learning opportunity, the better it will be going into the future.
Thank you, Joyce. And Richard, if you want to have the last comment, the last 1 minute, we will wrap it up.
Naming your kids. Teach your kids to have, when they're going to have babies, to give them their name in their own language. And when they're going to start doing that, people will ask, since when did you have that name? Then they're going to say, remembering the 215 kids. That's going to be their answer. That's going to be repeated more than once a year. It's going to be repeated almost every year, because the kids will know why they have that name. It's because of those who never went home. So that's how I see a project to be starting, but we need to educate our younger kids, the kids that they have families. I see names, that is not at all their original name. It's another name. So naming kids with their Aboriginal language, that will be fantastic. We will have no more Richard. Can you imagine that? No more Richard in a country who's going to be called an Indian called Richard. We're going to have a guy named, an Indian named Ijinaguzi, Wanaki, Minawe, Megas, all those names. They're going to repeat it every day. Just imagine the boom that will create just by saying one simple word. Small is beautiful instead of to be big and ugly. So small is beautiful. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Richard. And with that, we are going to be concluding our conversation here. On behalf of the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, I would like to extend a big, big thank you, a miigwech, to Dorene, Madeleine, Richard, Joyce, and Therese for joining us today. I want to thank our audience for joining us and being very patient with our technical challenges. I would like to remind everyone, tomorrow will be the academic panel discussion with guests Raymond Faulkner, Kona Williams, Keisha Supernat, and Eldon Yellowhorn. And so that dialogue will begin at 5 p.m. Winnipeg time, or Central Daylight Time, and will be recorded in English and French and broadcast. So with that, I will end our feeds, and I'll ask our participants just to stay in the room for a moment longer. Thank you.
Miigwech.